Live. COVID-19 is no longer news, yet it remains the world's most devastating disease in recent times, taking a big toll across nations that ultimately brought the entire global economy to a standstill. Nigeria is among the early countries whose political leadership took bold and decisive action that saved the nation from major death toll compared with advanced societies. The federal government has expended so much on improving the hospitals, isolation and testing centers, laboratories, and developing capacities across all sectors to contain the pandemic and stem the spread of the virus. This is besides the major challenge of government efforts to make the economy work across all sectors, including education, agriculture, health, and others, which directly have been impacted negatively by the pandemic. But how has Nigeria responded to government's directives? Regular hand washing, use of face mask, social distancing, among others. The daily statistics of COVID-19 reports by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, clearly shows spike in infectious rate in Nigeria, an indication that Nigerians are in violation of all medical directives tonight. On Tuesday Live, experts will examine so many areas. Why the increasing rate? Why the nonchalant attitude of Nigerians in the use of face mask, social distancing, and even regular washing of hands? The general impact on the economic, education, among others. But before these, here is a background report by Joyken Abakuya.
The severity of coronavirus, especially on the elderly and people with underlying ailments, instills fear and anxiety on this group, most of whom take the desperate path to stay protected. Among several measures are extreme hygiene and seclusion. These are acceptable habits adopted globally to avoid the virus. As it were, clustering of people is considered a facilitator of the spread. This is why social and physical distancing, as well as the compulsory use of masks in public, are prerequisites needed to tame COVID-19. However, in Nigeria, compliance with stipulated guidelines is poor. Despite widespread awareness campaigns and warnings from government and the health sector, cases have continued to spike, a challenge waiting to be surmounted.
Since that way they talk say, nah, it was a corona day. We never see anybody now when they say corona day. We never see.
Every day face mask, in fact, it doesn't even enable one to breathe very well. So we are tired of the face mask. Please just be going normal the way we have been going before.
This nonchalance on the part of some Nigerians has given rise to more fatalities. The situation is adversely affecting all sectors of the Nigerian economy.
COVID-19 pandemic is, to me, the single most dreaded challenge the Nigerian economy has faced since our independence in 1960. Because this very challenge is not just economic, it is social, it is health. So it's just a three-pronged problem. It is a great challenge for this economy and a great challenge for its people. And the way out is reform, reform, and reform.
The education sector, which is semi-inactive, is one of the worst hit.
It has disorganized the academic calendar year of education. So most of the students are at home, not knowing when the school will be fully resumed.
It would be wrong to express anger at the government because we know the kind of situation that we're in. But for every SS3 student, and I know I speak on behalf of all of us, it is tough. We are confused. We literally just don't know where we stand anymore. As students, as undergraduates, we feel stuck.
Observers say the global impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, including the socio-economic fallout of the scourge, is far-reaching. Doing the needful by abiding to preventive measures should be the utmost agenda of every Nigerian, who should lean on the cliché, prevention is better than cure. In Lagos, Joyken Abakuya.
COVID-19 and spike in infectious rate in Nigeria is the focus of the program tonight. It's Tuesday Live, and at point in the course of the program, our phone lines will be open. If we're true to you, please, in responding or raising your concern, please turn down the volume of your television set and ensure that time is of essence during the program. You don't need to take all the time. Also, you can be part of the conversation tonight through our Twitter handle at Tuesday Live NTA. My guest tonight, I have the National Coordinator, Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Dr. Sani Aliyu. Welcome to Tuesday Live.
Thank you for having me, Omini.
Okay. Also, Director, Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, Dr. Chinwe Ocha.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, the doctor is up. We'll reintroduce her, but she's right in one of the studios. Also tonight, joining us from, okay, we can see Dr. Chinwe Ocha there. From Ibadan Network Center, we have Professor Oka Obunga. Professor Oka Obunga is a professor of sociology, University of Ibadan. Good to see you on the program tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Let's begin. But before then, in the course of the program, we shall be having some reports dotting the landscape of Nigeria to give you a feel of how the response is like across the country and how Nigerians appreciate what all the stakeholders across the sectors, in the public and private sectors, are doing to ensure that this whole thing, Nigerians have it as a tip of the iceberg to understand that COVID-19 is real. Well, Dr. Aliyu, let me begin with you. At the beginning, we had daily briefings by the Presidential Task Force, but it appears it is juggled now. What would have been responsible?
So we now meet twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays, and the press briefings have always followed the PTF meetings that we have. We start the PTF meetings usually around midday and we finish around 4 p.m. It's usually a 4-hour meeting, and then immediately afterwards we brief the press. When we first started, when the PTF first started, we were meeting every day, Monday to Friday. In fact, some days including Saturdays and Sundays as well. But now that the frequency of the meeting has reduced, this is why we are now having the press briefings twice a week. But they're still very, very focused, and I believe they still meet the needs of the public in terms of information sharing.
Okay. Now, quoting the PTF directly, where you are coordinating as National Coordinator, flagrant disregard to rules to contain COVID-19 is responsible for the increasing spread in Nigeria. What's the meaning of this?
So, I mean, this is a respiratory viral infection. The only way that you can protect yourself from catching it is by having a barrier between yourself and the infected person. That barrier could be physical distancing, it could be the use of a face mask, it could be staying at home, it could be gelling or washing your hands, avoiding touching your face, etc. There is no vaccine, there is no preventive therapy for COVID-19. But all these interventions will require a change in our behavior. And that's where we are struggling, because people, generally humans, are social animals, aren't they? We all like interacting, we like shaking hands, we like going out to have a good time with our friends, etc. But the new normal requires a complete sea change in our attitude and our behavior. And unless and until we change our behavior, this virus will continue to move from one person to the next, to the next, to the next. It will not stop until a large proportion of the population is infected.
Okay. Now, the other aspect of it says compulsory use of the face mask or face shield is now fully enforced.
So,
was it not enforced before?
So it has always been enforced, but we are also relying on state governments through their different laws and acts to enforce this. As I said earlier on, behavioral change is so difficult. If we enforce the use of face masks, the police cannot be everywhere all the time. For instance, the security agents cannot be there all the time. So it's about risk perception. So when I came into this studio, I maintained my physical distancing before taking off my mask. I didn't need anybody to enforce this because I understand the risk that I face if I put myself out, if I expose myself to communities, to people that might be potentially infected. So, but that's the message that we need to get out. And it's more difficult if you have a cohort of people within society that either do not believe that this is a problem or they do not think that it will affect them. The NOI polls, we do NOI polls every week. And what is consistent is that every week, 99% of Nigerians, when we ask them, have heard about COVID-19. 90-something% know how to protect themselves with regards to COVID-19. But translating that knowledge to action is different. You find that there's a sudden drop when you ask people, do you use a face mask all the time? Or do you practice physical distancing? Or do you avoid mass gatherings, etc.? And it's more difficult for a disease where a lot of people have not even seen somebody with COVID. And the majority, 80% of those that catch COVID will have a mild illness, a bit like a cold, and will get better. So they don't think it's a problem. Very few people have seen sick patients with COVID. And the few that have seen sick patients, it's mostly abroad. And this is what we are starting to change now in terms of our risk communication strategy. We have started working through some of the treatment centers. There was a television crew that went to one of the isolation and treatment centers here in Abuja, and we're trying to link up with the National Hospital as well. And with the permission of these patients to start showing Nigerians that are actually very sick with COVID or have recovered from it or have lost loved ones.
We'll get to that. Just to say that I'll get to Dr. Chinwe very soon and Professor Obuma. Let's just demonstrate this, because if you say compulsory use of face masks or face shield, let me just demonstrate that I'm coming. Now, if I demonstrate this, now if I do this, this is a face mask, right?
Yes.
Now, if I do this, the two are in use, right?
Yes.
If I do this, I'm using this alone. Now, there's an argument out there. How do you use this two? When should I use this alone?
Okay.
When should I use this alone? When should I use the two? So, very important.
So the key thing that we are pushing for at the moment is the use of the face mask. And when you apply your face mask, you should pull it a little bit down so that it sits snugly, covering your nose and your mouth. You should also pinch it. Most the surgical face masks there's a way that you can pinch them. Some of the cloth face masks already have a covering over the nose. What we don't want is for you to put a face mask and then you expose your nose. You might be very handsome, you might have a really nice nose, etc., but we don't want to see it. Neither is it useful for you to pull your face mask when talking, because the purpose is to stop any transmission of aerosols from droplets from your mouth or from your nose, because as we speak, we send out infectious viral particles if we are infected. We are putting less emphasis on the face shield simply because the face shield alone is not enough. It is not enough. If you put this face shield, if I come by your side and I talk to you, you will still be exposed to droplet infection. Personally, when I use the face shield, I always use the face shield with a face mask, but I only use the face shield if I'm going into a large gathering where I am in very close proximity to people and my eyes are not protected. The purpose of the face shield is to give you additional protection for your eyes, because if the droplets go into any mucosal surface, including the eyes, you can get infection.
So those who use the face shield without the face mask, are they correct?
No, they are not correct.
So can they be educated,
face
please?
Mask.
That's why I did the demonstration.
Face mask, face mask. If you want to add a face shield, it's fine, but face mask is what you should use primarily.
And when you're using the face shield, it has to be with a face mask.
So I'll tell you the genesis for the face shield. The genesis of the face shield is when you have somebody in intensive care or very sick, you know, they suck secretions from people that are unconscious and are producing secretions in their respiratory tract. So that sucking, it's called suction. It generates a lot of aerosol. So if you're using just a face mask and you don't have a shield to protect your eyes, the generation of those aerosols would go into your eyes. So that's why in the ICU or in critical care setups, the face shield is used. But suddenly it has found its way into the community. And all the evidence so far is about face mask. But if you want to use a face shield to provide additional protection to your eyes, it's more relevant if you are in a massive crowd where people are standing very close to you. Some may not be wearing a mask, and if they speak to you or shout or cough into your face, you will get infection. So that's where a face shield may be useful. But a face mask is what we recommend.
Okay, let's leave it there for now. I believe if you're just joining us, you have gotten enough enlightenment because it has become very fashionable. Some people, you see them with a face shield without a mask.
Yeah, it's
or a mask without. So it means if you're using the face shield, you must use a mask alongside the face shield. So this is like
additional protection
to this, but you can't use this alone except you combine the two.
It's like you've locked your front door and you've left the rear door open.
Okay, thank you very much for that enlightenment. Okay, let's go to Dr. Chinwe. Dr. Chinwe, the other aspect which has been emphasized by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has been the fact that the concern has been, some people say the national response appears not very effective, mostly seen in the rather uncooperative attitude by some states, e.g. in emphasis until Midday a few days ago, Cross River and Kogi State. Can you give us an update regarding national response totally in Nigeria in containing this whole pandemic in Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Omini. Let me start by correcting my name. I'm Chinwe Ochu, not Ocha. We have responded to this outbreak using what we call the whole of society approach, because this is an infectious disease outbreak that has brought to the fore the fact that health is everyone's business and is a multi-sectoral problem. It's not just restricted to health. So this was why, right from the outset, a multi-sectoral response was initiated. So at the national level, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, we activated an emergency operations center at the national level at the level of 3. We call it level 3, which is the highest level of response. And then we also have that higher strategic oversight that is given by the Presidential Task Force that was also initiated because of the gravity of this outbreak. Then at the state level, we have the State Public Health Emergency Operations Centers, which had been established even before the COVID-19 outbreak. So for this outbreak now, states activated those public health emergency operations centers. Now, each of these emergency operations centers has pillars of response. In those pillars, we have case management, we have infection prevention and control pillar, we have the risk communication pillar, the logistic pillar, research pillar, and so on and so forth. So what these pillars do is at that level of the EOC, they plan, they strategize, develop guidance, documents, and then they are able to coordinate the response at the national level. And then we also, from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, we usually deploy what we call the rapid response team to support states once they record a case. And the essence of this is to enable the states to take ownership of the response themselves, to build their capacity and guide them and support them in the response. But our primary goal is that the state drives the response, and this is what has been happening. So across the 36 states and FCT. Currently, I'm happy to announce that the states are coming up, even some of the states like Cross River and Kogi that were not cooperating before, they are taking ownership. We are seeing that gradual progression towards doing exactly what should be done. So the states are the ones responsible for the health of their own people, and what we do at the national level, even at the PTF level, is to provide that guidance and provide that support and ensure that the states have the capacity to respond to this disease. So at the laboratory level, we have established a lot of molecular testing laboratories for COVID-19 across the various states of the Federation. We started with just 5 molecular testing laboratories by the time we detected the first case, but currently we have over 40 of them across the 36 states and FCT. They are all testing for COVID-19. We have also activated the GeneSpart technology. We've been able to reconfigure that technology to test for COVID-19, and we have about 40 of such machines in various states in the country. We're also making use of what we call the COBAS technology, the COBAS machine that we use for the naive study for HIV. So it's a high throughput PCR technology that can test up to, each machine can test about 1,500 samples at a go. And we have 2 of such in our National Reference Laboratory here in Abuja. So with that, we are ramping up our testing capacity. So we are able to test as many as we should test to be able to get to that 1% of the Federation. The capacity is there. So where we are also focusing our attention now is in ramping up sample collection, because we can't test except samples are collected. And this sample collection is done at the state level. So that is why we keep supporting the states, encouraging them to collect more samples. And states are beginning to develop strategies that will enable them to collect more samples. We have sample collection centers being set up in various states where people can drive in and get tested and get their samples collected. And once these samples are collected, they are transported to the nearest testing laboratory. We're also doing a lot of research, working towards validating rapid diagnostic test kits that can be used for point-of-care testing for COVID-19. Currently, the research is going on that. We don't have any validated kits yet. All the kits in the market that people are buying and using, we haven't validated anyone, and we're not sure of the results that you will get by using those kits. So we encourage Nigerians not to make use of those rapid diagnostic test kits until we come up with ones that are validated that we're sure will give us reliable results. That when they say that someone is positive, the person we know is truly positive. And when he says negative, we know it's truly negative. Until we get to that, we don't advise anyone to make use of the RDTs. So another major strategy we're using is risk communication, which the National Coordinator of PTF has also emphasized, because this is an infectious disease outbreak that is driven so much by behavioral factors. And changing people's behavior is one of the most difficult tasks that you can do. A lot depends on how people perceive risk and what they feel, the trust they have in the identified interventions. So risk communication, community engagement, this is one of our major strategies for containing the outbreak. And we're doing this collaboratively with the other agencies like the National Orientation Agency, National Primary Healthcare Development Agency.
We know that Nigerians are by nature very communal, and the new normal regarding COVID-19 has to do with social distancing, physical distancing, and could this be a problem trying to adapt to a new way of life? What's your assessment of this from your own perspective as a professional?
Yes. I mean, this is a very difficult thing you're telling people to do, you know, especially when the behavioral change you expect from them is something that causes a form of discomfort or deprives them of the pleasure they usually derive from maybe their social gatherings and co. So for sure it is a difficult thing. But like I said, it all depends on the level of perception of risk. If someone knows he's going to die by indulging in a pleasurable behavior, that perception of risk will make the person to be able to inconvenience himself or herself and take that extra step to stay safe. So that is what we are doing. We're not saying this is not something we're used to. It's a new normal that we have to adapt. But like we all know, the cases are rising. Until we have a vaccine, we are not yet seeing the end very near. So it's something that we may have to live with for a very long time. So the best thing to do is to know how to adapt so that we can live in this new normal life and stay safe while we go about our usual businesses. So this is the new normal approach that we are taking and asking people to adapt to. So when we ask people to wear their face mask, we are not saying that this face mask is comfortable, but we try as much as possible to advise you on the one that is good for you, the one that can be comfortable, and you do it not just because you enjoy doing it, but because of the risk perception that you have and the fact that you know that not only you are at risk, but also your loved ones at home are at risk if you take this infection to them at home. So it is a very complex problem that demands an innovative approach towards solving. And this is what we are doing on a daily basis, and this is why we are working with evidence, carrying out all these weekly polls to identify the best strategy to drive home this risk communication to the people and to the community.
Audio challenge in Ibadan is coming up. We sorted out, we'll go to Ibadan. Prof, just bear with us over there. But I think at this point, as you told you, taking some reports, dotting the landscape of the country. If the first report from Kaduna is ready, can we take a listen to it?
30,000 confirmed cases across the country. Stringent measures have been put by the Presidential Task Force to check the spread of the disease. Top on the list of measures taken include the use of face masks and social distancing. But a number of people are yet to come to terms with this, advancing flimsy reasons.
I don't like something to block my nose. That's why I don't like to wear it.
I lost my face mask.
You lost it? Yes. But don't you know it's dangerous to go out without it?
I know, but I lost it. I couldn't find it.
With the alarming rate of the spread of the disease, safety comes first, even though some complain about experiencing discomfort while using face masks. Experts observe that it is like taking a bitter pill.
But we are not using it for comfort. We are using it to protect. If you can see any medication you are taking, be it whatever, you are not taking it for just because you want to take it as it's something good. You want to take it for protection. You want to take it for medication.
Amidst the pandemic, business booms for many, like this young girl who says she makes good profit selling face masks because she doesn't go to school.
Sometimes I go to the bank because they buy in the bank. If you don't have, you cannot enter the bank.
For now, people are trying to live with the virus as lockdown has been relaxed and a measure of normalcy is gradually returning.
All is coming from Lafia, Nasarawa State, and Makodi, Benue State.
Non-compliance of many residents of Lafia to the COVID-19 precautionary measures is taking its toll on the increasing number of cases in Nasarawa State. Following the outbreak of coronavirus in the state in April and the need to contain the spread of the virus, precautionary measures were rolled out by the state government to contain the virus. Among them is the wearing of face masks in public places, especially where physical distancing may be difficult. However, non-compliance by residents is taking its toll on the increasing number of cases in the state, but there are exceptions in places of strict compliance. Medical experts warn that non-compliance to the COVID-19 protocols has an adverse effect on the fight against the dreaded virus.
One of the major mechanisms by which the organism spreads, that is known presently, is that it becomes particles in the air. We call it aerosolization, so that it spreads in the air as particles and can easily be absorbed.
Nasarawa State says the government is intensifying an enlightenment campaign to reduce community transmission.
Every person in Nasarawa State must go on face mask. It is compulsory for every person. This is aimed at protecting people of Nasarawa State from contracting this pandemic.
Nigeria recorded its index case of COVID-19 precisely on the 27th of February this year, a development that made the National Center for Disease Control and Federal Ministry of Health to outline precautionary measures against the disease. Part of the measures include use of face masks, social distancing, and frequent hand washing with running water and soap, as well as the use of hand sanitizers. 4 months after, some Makurdi residents have abandoned the safety measures and are going about their normal activities without fear of contacting the virus. What is the reason behind this?
I used to block my nose, I can't breathe well. That's the reason why I don't want to.
However, other Makurdi residents are observing all precautionary measures against the virus.
I know that the coronavirus is real. And moreover, I'm a health personnel. I know the importance of wearing the face mask and then keeping to the social distance.
Those two reports have given us perspectives to what we are discussing tonight. Well, Dr. Aliyu, as soon as the audio challenge is sorted out from Ibadan Network Center, we'll go to Professor Oka Obunga to sustain his thoughts on the areas we have to take him tonight. Now, the other aspect which is very, very emphatic is by the last briefing by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. It was very emphatically stated, all government offices shall continue to hold visual meetings in their offices, especially where participation exceeds 4 persons, and suspend all unnecessary travels. That's one. Is it only government offices? What about the private sector? So, banks and other places?
So, Omini, we did clarify afterwards. This was from the chairman, the SGF's speech, and when I came on, I did clarify further. What we are actually saying is we want to discourage unnecessary travel and unnecessary mixing of people. In the past, before COVID came up, most meetings were physical. We were not used to this virtual arrangement, but the world has changed. Virtual arrangements are not only protective when it comes to the transmission of infections such as COVID, they are also cheaper for government, and they save time. The time it will take me to go to Lagos to have a meeting, if I can have a virtual meeting in my own office, it's faster. A lot of the meetings, during the day, I can count the number of hours I'm actually in the office. Most of the time, I'm at home, working from home, and having all my virtual meetings, and we still get things done. So what we're trying to do is to encourage this culture during the COVID pandemic, and hopefully beyond the COVID pandemic as well. It will be one of the spin-offs as a result of the COVID pandemic. The cost of governance needs to come down because the fiscal space is already very tight. And cutting down on unnecessary travel is one of those approaches. We know we have opened the skies. We are now having internal domestic travel. So we've had instances where people have been requesting for board meetings for the different government agencies. But if you can do virtual, it's unnecessary to bring a whole number of people, 20, 25, 30 people, to sit down around a table, to have to pay for their accommodation, have to pay for their travel, etc. Sitting allowances will still be paid even if it is virtual. And it's safer, for one, and you save, it's more efficient and you save money. Of course, the internet, access to internet continues to be an issue, but as you know, broadband, the Honorable Minister of Communications is already working very hard to ensure broadband access and availability across the country. Nowadays, even international conferences that have taken place over the last 6 months, they've been virtual. and they've been very effective, and you've been able to get information that you need, which in the past you've had to go and spend 5 days in Paris or 7 days in Amsterdam attending an international conference. But now you can do it in the comfort of your home. But more importantly, it will protect you, because this COVID thing has not gone away. It has not gone away. Some of the relaxation measures we put were pragmatic steps because of the issue of opening up our economy and the need to balance lives with livelihoods. But we know that this pandemic is not over. It's far from over. In fact, the numbers, as you can see from the NCDC website, the numbers continue to go up. We're still on an upward
worry why we're taking this program to focus on that
yes.
tonight. Now, with the relaxation of interstate travels, some people now feel the new normal is over. Let's return back to normal. How can this be checked?
So there are certain aspects that we have maintained. So for instance, the night curfew, the 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. night curfew. We know that most activities happen before 12 midnight. So we know that we are only catching a small window of maybe people between 10 p.m. and 12 midnight that have to go out. But the fact that you still have a curfew also provides that message that things are not back to normal yet. And we have refused to open bars and restaurants and gyms and social events, event centers, etc.
But there are a couple who are still functioning even within the capital city, federal capital territory. Are you aware of this?
We're not, but event centers should not be opened. And if they are opened, the security services should enforce the closures. They are not supposed to be open, event centers, because they are a very good source of increased transmission simply because of the number of people that congregate. Anything that would attract mass congregation is discouraged. For religious places of worship, we had to take the decision to open them up with strict policies in place. But other than that, if you look at all our other policies, we have continued to maintain that issue of making sure that people do not congregate in one area. Markets, we didn't have much of an option with markets because you can't close them for too long. People need to access food, etc. But if the numbers continue to go up, if they continue to go up, believe me, government will not sit back and look at people dying from this. We will review our decisions. But now is the time for us to continue to follow those non-pharmaceutical interventions that may be burdensome in a way, but they're still easier than people being locked down in their homes.
Okay. I understand the audio challenge in Ibadan has been fixed, and Professor Obunga can hear me now. Professor Obunga, you have listened to the opening thoughts by our guest from here. Let's hear from you now.
Hello. Omini, can you hear me from there? Yes, the point has been made by your guests that it's a behavioral change approach that holds the key to confronting this coronavirus and finally seeing it eliminated in Nigeria. And that's very true. But the nature of behavior is that it is not something that evolves or develops suddenly. Behavior actually is a humanized code that shows what people have been doing actually for centuries in order for them to get to where you find them now. Now, if a sudden pandemic threatens that matrix, you have to go down to the communities and work from inside outside. You have to, the director just talked about non-pharmaceutical approaches. I
absolutely love that expression that he used. You have to work deeply with the communities. For instance, I belong to Yaka Academy. That's an association of academics from Cross River State, the Yaka area. There's a benediction that elders are supposed to transfer by blowing what they call tufa in the hands, in the open palms of a younger person. And this is something to be received daily. And they would hold, the elders will hold the hands and blow. Now, you wouldn't see that kind of behavior, while you can incriminate it in the transmission of coronavirus, is something very vital to the well-being of that community. You have to go to the community leaders themselves and see how they can still retain the benefits of that kind of behavior, because they will not abandon it. They cannot. You want them to stay alive, and this is the cultural medium by which they do stay alive. So Yaka academics were able to do that and then see how we could retain physical distance, avoid the blowing, but at the same time maintain empathy and social cohesion. So in the Nigerian model of this combat that we are having, I think it's important to make several clarifications. One, when we talk about physical distance, it should not be at the expense of social cohesion. You can have physical distance if you put people who are quarantined somewhere and you send them flowers and you send them text messages. That is physical distance, but it is not social distance. Human beings are a species who naturally, as primates, need some kind of social contact in their lives. So we should, first of all, it's a misnomer, and we need to find out how the people also understand that their behavioral resistance, if you will, is not something that we are dismissing at large. We need to find a middle way that carries them along, entertains and accommodates what they achieve, what they perceive themselves achieving with the behavior that's already established in the society, in order to move them away from it too. When we talk about the new normal, it's a phrase that's come from, the media, particularly the Western media. The question for Nigeria is, what exactly was the old normal? The old normal was something characterized by anomalous uncertainty. Fatalism was the key response of the people to a situation where they did not have power to deal with the dominant desires of their lives. They did not have water, they did not have enough fuel, they did not have enough food. There was no security. This was the old normal. So this is actually a reinforcement of that anomaly. When people are already satisfied that nothing is going to happen for them, the system seems wired to betray them, and they need to meet more often to chart a way forward. It's going to be very difficult to us. I'm a sociologist. I'm not saying that, resisting recommendations for behavioral change, makes sense to me, or that I endorse it. But I'm saying we have to understand it. We don't start a priori by discrediting it. We have to know why people will continue behaving the way they do. There is too much uncertainty in Nigeria. People work hard, they don't really see the rewards. People don't work hard, they see magnificent rewards. Babies are born, there's no real guarantee that they will survive. Women get pregnant, do they carry the pregnancies to term? We have one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the world. There are 744 deaths attributable to coronavirus in the country from the 27th of February to now that we are speaking. Meanwhile, there are all kinds of conditions, including hunger, including malaria, that confront these people with daily deaths, that confront these Nigerians with the daily need for burials. I have studied mortality statistics in several Nigerian communities, and it is very strange to see that in the 52 weeks of a year, there is no single week that tiny communities do not find it necessary to bury one person or the other. This is the kind of necropolis that we live in, a virtual necropolis in this country where people die continuously, falling down like fleas from walls. And then suddenly a pandemic comes which also aggravates the uncertainty, but in terms of the mortality statistics, it looks unreal to the people. So at the behavioral attitudinal level, we need to sacrifice the, arid sciences that we usually these kinds of things and recognize something that, is in Sociology 101. That is, when a people perceive things to be real, in their consequences, those things are real. If people think that something does not exist, it does not do anybody any credit or service to start by saying that the people have come again. Why are they resisting that kind of thing? Look at the kind of market systems we have. The elite can always put themselves in a government-reserved area where, even without talking about lockdown, they are in isolation. They are not coming face to face together. The kind of sports they play do not bring them together like that. Their children have home-based teachers. You have DSTV. They can stay inside their homes and remain entertained. But have you looked at the architecture of uncertainty that I'm talking about? Children come back from home. It's just a one-room affair. The father, the mother, the children, 8 of them are in the same place. There is no electricity. There is no air conditioning. There is no DSTV. They must come out of that space. What is it that is inside the house? Have we fixed energy so that if nothing else, the children can be encouraged to study at home? What will they just sit down in that single one room doing? As a sociologist, if these systemic dimensions of human behavior are not addressed, we will get the science and the technology and the technocracy correct. That is something Nigerians are very good at. That is why in 2017, the World Health Organization conducted the JEE, that is the Joint External Evaluation of International Health Response Capabilities in Nigeria. And there were 3 key elements in that. You are talking about the capacity to prevent a sudden pandemic like this, and the capacity to detect it, and then the capacity to respond to it. In terms of the capacity to prevent and the capacity to respond to a sudden pandemic like this, out of a maximum score of 5, which was interpreted as sustainable capacity, Nigeria scored 1.5 and 1.9 respectively. 1.5 in the capacity to prevent and 1.9 in the capacity to respond. The greatest it scored was in the capacity to detect, which was 2.6. Little has changed since that time. Up to June 30th, this month, South Africa had conducted testing at a level of 1,630,008 tests. For a country that has a population size of 58 million. The corresponding number for Nigeria within that same time was 138,242 or thereabouts. For a country that is projected to have a population of 206 million, which means if the South African proportion is applied to Nigeria, instead of the current 183,000 tests that we have conducted, you should be expecting somewhere close to 5 million tests already done in Nigeria. So we have not tested enough. We still have to test more in order to know the magnitude of this pandemic. And then finally, still on the behavioral track, my worry is that the case definition syntax that Nigeria is adopting, by which I mean that you have to first of all be symptomatic anyway in order for you to be tested, does not agree with the well-known demographic profile of the country. We are a young population. We know that it is the elderly, for instance, who manifest these symptoms faster, and ultimately mortality is higher among them. There are so many asymptomatic young people out there who have this coronavirus, but we are not testing them because that is not what we are geared to do right now. And so what you have is a combustible cocktail of viruses moving up and down the place that nobody can detect because there are no symptoms. We have to get back to that syntax and how we can start saying, how will we do universal testing, for instance? Why is it that during the lockdown, we did not use that opportunity to conduct the kind of census that is overdue since 2006? The next census should have been 2016. It would have given us a better profiling of the population, and we will know how to respond. We have excellent epidemiologists. You have two of the best as your guests there. But this goes beyond these pharmaceutical interventions. This goes into the realm of the social sciences, econometrics, hunger, survivalism, livelihoods, and why our people are rational, perfectly rational people. This idea that just because we ask them to do certain things and they don't, there's something wrong with them, must stop. What have we given them to make them as rational as ourselves? This is a situation where it is the intellect that will change behavior. And at a time when governance should be collaborating more closely with academia in its virological laboratories and even with the medical sector, both sectors are on strike. I mean, what kind of country is this? Can we, there's a book that I like, Adversaries to Allies. Can we not suspend whatever aggravations we have internally in order to say, okay, I need my academics now, I need my scientists now, I need my medical doctors now. Let's come round and do this thing and then fight tomorrow. This is the principle of segmentary opposition. When you have something that is bombarding your city, all those internal differences among the different sectors of the city must collapse so that you fight a unified battle. Now, academia is busy fighting the government, is on strike, they are paying them, they are not paying them, the medical doctors are giving advice, Chinese should not come in, nobody is listening to them. Is that how to run this kind of pandemic? Our own behavior too is contributing to the crisis. Can somebody not say that? So,
Doctor, you heard the line of thought of Professor Obongo there. I don't know whether you want to respond briefly to it.
So, as you know, we had audio problems, so I didn't hear most of it, but certainly I agree with some of the points he's making. You cannot fight a battle alone or divided as a country. The COVID pandemic is really, it's the equivalent of a battle or war. We have to come together, both government and private sector and the general public as well, to come together and have a unified, single approach to this issue. To me, it's also about perception of risk, the understanding that people have, as Prof said over there. One of the issues with COVID is the majority will be very well. And if you have a test done and it's positive and you feel very well and people are insisting that you should go into an isolation facility, of course you will not understand it unless it's explained to you that the purpose of that isolation is not for treatment. It's to remove you from the community to stop further transmission. So it's one of the things that we should have sent out right early on in terms of the messaging. It's possible you may not have symptoms. The most infectious period is 2 days before the onset of symptoms and 3 days after. So you may not have symptoms, but you will still be excreting the virus. And it's very important to stop that transmission, to remove you from the general community. We are continuing to push with the non-pharmaceutical interventions because it's the only alternative to a complete lockdown. If we do not have effective non-pharmaceutical interventions being implemented in the country, nothing will stop this deadly virus from spreading. As far as it's concerned, it's what it likes, moving from one person to another, moving from one person to another. So I think a lot of it really is having that understanding, making the public aware, making sure that public awareness campaigns are going the last mile, engaging our community leaders, our religious leaders, our traditional authorities. Because if I come out and say this is what you should do, you may not necessarily listen to me. But a pastor, a religious leader, for instance, sending out that message is a lot more effective. So we still have a lot of work. And to me, the only way that this thing can stop, the only way it can stop is the fact that it is in our hands. It's all about behavioral change. It's all about understanding our risk perception and making sure that we continuously remember how to protect ourselves and loved ones.
Okay. Some tweets have started coming in, and I'll take these tweets to Dr. Chinwe. Dr. Chinwe, this tweet is coming from Nadop Wuyep 77. It says, is cost of treatment, feeding the patient, and burial in the event of death fully taken care of by the state, federal government, or the patient's family? With the rapid motion of the virus, what type of biomedical waste management is used, knowing that if improperly disposed, could also pollute the air, water, and soil, thereby spreading disease of all sorts? Is COVID-19 airborne? God bless Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much for these questions. I'm happy that they are coming up because they're also bringing up the point you've been trying to make, that to control COVID-19, you need everybody to be brought on board. So it is a problem that demands a multi-sectoral approach in our response. For the treatment of COVID-19, in our treatment centers, patients are managed and treated free of charge. So, and then of course, you know that these patients don't go into the hospital with their relatives. We don't even let the relatives come close to them because they are very, very, the infection is highly transmissible. So those of them that are in the treatment centers are well catered for. And then on the issue of environmental waste, this is also the aspect where the Ministry of Environment comes in, and we are working collaboratively so to ensure that the numerous wastes that are being generated, for instance, by the use of face masks, the disposable face masks, that they are also well disposed of. People use this mask and they drop them on the streets, some even, you know, so there's a lot of environmental contamination and pollution that could come as a result of our interventions. And that is where the Ministry of Environment comes in. So this is a whole of society approach. Everybody is working closely to ensure that this, and this is not just for the government. This is one big time that I'm very happy that is making everybody to understand that we all have to take responsibility. So this is the first time I've never seen this level of community sensitization towards health, where everybody is now conscious of their health. But let me also say that there has been a shift in perception over the course of this outbreak. We've had the shift in community perception from that community anxiety where everybody was afraid of the disease because we didn't know much about it, was just coming. From there, we moved to we started seeing a lot of doubts and misbelief and disbelief. And then from then to this current state of mistrust and risky behavior that we're seeing, a lot of nonchalant and complacency, nonchalant attitude and complacency that we're seeing in the community. So, and it is a very complex thing, like the sociologist Prof has said, and that is why we need everybody to be part of this response. We need people like Prof to come on, and we need all the people in the various sectors to come together. This is also why we are bringing together scientists across the nation. Our research institutes are coming together. The academia, we have also brought them in. We have formed the Nigeria COVID-19 Research Consortium to help to address some of these questions, and social science is an integral part of that consortium. So I think this is one big thing we have achieved from this outbreak, this level of collaboration, bringing people together and letting everybody know his or her own responsibility, including the man there out on the street knows that he has to be responsible, take his own responsibility seriously for us to be able to contain this outbreak. So we are also working together with the community influencers, the traditional leaders, the religious leaders, and even the youth leaders and the various civil society groups and civil society groups and organizations. We're bringing everybody together to see what we can do to ensure that we contain this outbreak. The problem we are having is that people don't even believe that COVID-19 is real. The average man out on the street believes that it is a hoax, it is a scam. And we want to understand why this is so. And that is why we need these specialists in this field to come together and brainstorm and see how we can get to the root of this problem. Some of them have been listed by Prof, and I think this is what is driving our response currently. We are putting in a lot of effort into social science, trying to understand. We need anthropologists to come and understudy the behavior of the people, live amongst them, and then let's see how we can together profile a solution to this problem. So this is not the time to say, oh, it's just the government, or it is these people, it is the health sector. This one is bringing to our understanding the importance, the utility of a whole of society approach in addressing health issues.
Is besides what government is doing, take responsibility, new normal. Well, we'll take a couple of reports, and as I speak, our phone lines are open. Our Twitter handle is Boston. We'll take some tweets. But before then, let's take this report from Ibadan.
The coronavirus pandemic has virtually affected all aspects of human lives in Nigeria, with the education sector on the receiving end. The closure of schools as part of measures to prevent spread of COVID-19 has affected about 40 million students nationwide, with most virtually doing nothing.
Now he's telling us that we who have to wait for 4 years before we bag a bachelor's degree, we have nothing to show for it.
The only thing keeping me in school is just my defense. Now I can't do my defense, I can't do my clearance, I can't go for service.
It has prevented us in school from meeting each other, from not talking to each other through online, but sometimes we talk to each other through online classes.
You just find out that when you get back home and you check on them, you see that most of the things they do does not even go with what you are expected them to have done. And this is more or less, you have to stay with them almost every time.
Some educationists decry the disruption of the academic calendar for year 2020, saying its effects is taking toll on all stakeholders, especially the private schools.
What we expected the federal government to have done is to have engaged in a very, wide consultation, bring in all the stakeholders. Let's rub minds together. What kind of protocols do we have to put in place to safeguard, the health of these final year students, so that they can sit down, write their final year exam?
Globally, 1.5 children, young, have been denied access to education. The effect of COVID on education is devastating.
As the novel coronavirus disease continues to record significant increase in Nigeria, the federal government is taking precautionary measures to curb its spread by advocating for the use of face masks, social distancing, hygienic attitudes, among others, before schools are eventually opened.
From Ibadan, we go to Uyo, Akwa Ibom State.
The novel coronavirus pandemic met most countries, including Nigeria, unprepared. However, its effect on the health and socio-economic lives of the people necessitated several safety protocols to curtail its spread. While the governments and relevant agencies have plunged in huge resources to manage the situation, the NCDC's daily record have continued to indicate exponential increase in cases of COVID-19. What could be responsible for this increase despite government's efforts?
Well, it's one of two things. One is that I guess we're testing more nationwide. So definitely if you test more, you'll be able to get more cases, recorded. And the other reason could be also that our people are not really taking this the precautions seriously.
Stakeholders in Akwa Ibom State suggest the way forward.
Testing ongoing, right direction.
information dissemination, right direction. But there is another part, the individual acceptance of responsibility. So away from what government is doing, we've come to a point where we must, as citizens, begin to ask, what are we doing? It's everyone's problem.
The chairman of Akwa Ibom State COVID-19 response team, Dr. Emmanuel Ekuwem, says the government will continue to employ every necessary instrument to empower the people with relevant information to help them stay safe.
Besides what government is doing, people should learn how to take responsibility for their own health at this moment. Well, we'll sustain the conversation. When we come back, we'll take off from the perspective of education and the faith of our children. We'll take a break.
For now, the best and most efficient way to avoid getting infected is through regular hygienic and sanitary practices, as well as social distancing. As individuals, we remain the greatest weapon to fight this pandemic. By washing our hands regularly with clean water and soap, disinfecting frequently used surfaces and areas, coughing into a tissue or elbow, and strictly adhering to infection prevention control measures in health facilities, we can contain this virus.
Coronavirus is real. Steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
COVID-19 errating cases in Nigeria is the focus tonight. Doctor, we begin this particular segment with you, and I'll go quote copiously what the PTF in one of its briefings said. Nigerian children are precious and their safety will not be compromised. The Federal Ministry of Education has released guidelines for reopening of schools, but no date. How do you place this side by side? And link with this tweet coming from Chris Simon. It says, with the increasing number of COVID-19 cases day by day in the country, I suggest the federal government should put the reopening of schools on hold until the pandemic is over. However, WAEC and NECO could be postponed till next year, 2021.
Okay, so I think we need to have some clarification. So the way the PTF works, we have a multi-sectoral responsibility. And the different sectors come to us with their issues to find what our view is, and it's debated heavily. And we also look at the science, we look at whether it's possible. So, for instance, education might come to us and say, we would like students, the final year students, to do their exams. Is it possible? So it's a yes or no. We'll look at it and we might say yes, but you have to do A and B and C and D. If you do that, it is safe. The role of the PTF is to provide guidance and policy when it comes to safe activities. It's just like you have a road across your house. It's a very busy road. And you come to me and ask, can I cross the road? And I'll tell you, yes, you can cross it. If you look left, you look right, you make sure there's no traffic, you make sure you listen as well, and then if you cross, it will be safe. That's what we did with the education side with regards to education. We balance. We looked at what can we do, what are those steps that we can take to minimize the risk of transmission by those people sitting the exams, those students sitting the exams. If the exams are held outdoors, if the weather permits, rather than indoors, if you limit the number of students, it's only 1 year of students that will be attending compared to the whole 5 or 6 years in a secondary school. If you make sure that the working surfaces are hygienically cleaned continuously, if you make sure that the students they wash their hands and also have face masks, I can tell you the risk of transmission will be very low, if at all. So what we have done is we've minimized the risk by placing all these conditions. And we've also weighed the issue of keeping students at home for another year, losing a whole year. Because this is going to affect, in the long term, it will definitely affect the young people's career. In the north, for instance, if you have a 15 or 16-year-old girl who has been at home for a year because she cannot sit for her exams and move on, what do you think will happen? The majority of them will probably end up getting married. And that's the end of their education and the end of any ambition they might have. So the decisions we take at the PTF, we don't take them lightly. Any recommendation that comes out has been heavily scrutinized. I can tell you with some of the implementation guidelines that we read out, it might appear very simple, but every sentence is argued by the members. People bring in their points and argue with every single word before we finalize it. So the PTF cannot say open schools. All we can say to the Ministry of Education is, if you do A, B, C, or D combined, it should be safe. But it is your decision, it's not the decision of the PTF as to whether exams can hold or not, or schools can open or not. All we are saying is that this is how it can be done safely. Okay. And we leave it to them, that particular sector to deliver on it.
Okay. For Professor Bunga, judging from what Dr. Liu has just said, discussing backstage, we know sometimes it was not a culture in Nigeria to just walk into your car, start the car, and put on your seatbelt. Talk less of the passenger using the state seatbelt. So, value mindset reorientation is key here. And if government are taking a position regarding the reopening of school or non-reopening of schools, but the debate is still up there. As a professional, what is your line of thought and what do you advise?
My line of thought is that when you have a nation of 206 million people, 36 states, who traverse 3 out of the 4 ecosystems in West Africa, okay, and you have 774 local government areas, a monolithic approach to anything is always bound to be erroneous. Whether to fertility control in the population sciences, or even transportation or management of schools. In Germany, schools don't all close at the same time, not because there's a pandemic, just normally. They stagger resumption, they stagger closure. Why? Take Nigeria now, so that children moving from the north of Nigeria, when we close, just as an example, we'll close somewhere like 2 weeks earlier. So the dominant traffic flow will move in one direction. And then those moving from the south to the north 2 weeks later. I'm just giving you an example. Not because there's a crisis, but because it's understood that you can free up the freeways by ensuring that not everybody meets there at the same time. If we resume schools, it's not just the examination. With respect this time to your guest, it's a well thought out plan, but the school is a microcosm of the larger society. It's an integral part of his life. It is connected to his mosques, it's connected to his churches, it's connected to his markets, it's connected to his transportation systems. Even if it is a segment of the studentry, in this case the graduating class that is to resume, you will be activating the transportation system across 774 local government areas. Pick any particular secondary school or university. You will be talking about a convergence from multiple directions of the students, however few, inside that territory. If there is an interstate lockdown, how do you go with that? If there is no public transportation and there are no flights because there's an interstate lockdown, but the schools can resume, if all those internal measures are in place, how do the students come? Where will they go for their, will there be borders? Where they were not boarding before, will we make provision for them to board? Because it is not just the examinations alone that will bring them from where they are. A more systemic assessment, panoramic assessment, has to be in place to realize that after the first exam they take, they will go to the market. They will need to buy a bucket. So we are doing well, but we need to realize that Nigeria, whether culturally, politically, religiously, spiritually, educationally, is a very complex entity. And it's not enough to have just, you could disaggregate it. You could say, okay, let's homogenize the approaches. Can we zonalize it? What is going to work for the North Central region? The Northeast is still under permanent bombardment by an insurgency that is yet to be brought under permanent control. We will look at the educational system there, the way we look at it in the more stable zones elsewhere. So sometimes when we mean very well, but I think it has also to do with the garrison mentality that we inherited through a long period of military dictatorship, where although we are operating something under federalism, in actual fact, we just want everybody to fall in line and march. The pandemic exposes the utility of that kind of normalcy. This pandemic is useful because it is teaching us lessons which are very bitter and we have refused to learn before now. That we cannot continue this way. There's nothing that is so bad that it is all bad. People will die, we regret that. Our sympathies will go there. But we have to proactively extract lessons for educational management, for health sector development. Okay, in the new normal, how will we build our cities and estates? Will we still have one tiny small room we call a dispensary in the primary school, or will there be parallel pediatric centers so that even in the society at large, where that school is ensconced, should there be a need for pediatric attention, children who are not even students in that particular school can have almost instant medical attention. Are we learning that lesson now? A few friends and I are currently working on a proposal that deals with pandemic management preparedness in Nigeria in the post-COVID-19 era. What will that Nigeria look like? What will our training in education look like, since we are dealing with education now? Can we not have a system whereby we can suddenly grant data? I mean, you look at it. There is a lockdown. I was locked down in Calabar. Okay? I was locked down in Calabar and I saw electricity company people going around to disconnect electricity at a time like that. I came out of my house and told us officials, this is an expression of iniquity. This is political iniquity. There are some octogenarians who need to refrigerate their insulin for their diabetes. And you what kind of country does that?
Prof, now let me go to Dr. Chinwe. Dr. Chinwe, still sustaining the conversation, the PTF has said that a survey revealed that 60% of Nigerians in the southeast do not believe that COVID-19 is real. Some of the reasons some Nigerians doubt reality of COVID-19. Now, you talked about awareness creation, education. Since then and now, where are we with that in the southeastern part of the country?
Yes, risk communication, community engagement is what we're doing in all the states of the country. And what NCDC is doing is supporting the states to do this. We have trained all the state health educators in all the 36 states and the FCT. Initially, we started with what I call the top-down approach of developing our risk communication messages at the national level and then expecting the states to adapt. We discovered that that approach is not very effective. So currently what we're doing is allowing the states themselves, the communities themselves, to develop their own risk communication messages by providing that guidance that they need. What we do is, as we train the health educators, we also engage with community sensitizers, with community influencers. We bring them together, we teach them, we let them know what this is all about, and then we support them to now develop their own risk communication messages. And because we discover that this attitude, there's a lot of mistrust. And when it comes to, once the average Nigerian sees that this is the government talking, and this is a problem that has come to be because of several years of erosion of trust in the government. So when we are talking, even if what we are saying is true and we have evidence to support it, it's very difficult for the average man on the street to believe because it links NCDC and PTF and all the rest with the government. But if this same message is conveyed by somebody, maybe a peer, somebody in your peer group, then that person tends to believe it more. So we are working closely with what I call the 4 C's of risk communication, looking at the content of the message we are giving to the people, looking at the communicator himself, who is giving out these messages, and that is where all these community influencers come to play a very critical role. We are also looking at the context. What works in the north may not work in the south. We have tried as much as possible to translate our risk communication messages into various indigenous languages. At the national level, we've translated our messages into about 12 indigenous languages, and we expect the states now and the local communities to now translate this into their own individual languages and dialects, that the way they can communicate effectively to the people. We're also looking at the channel of communication. So what you use in reaching the people, the persons in the urban society may not be the same media that you will use to reach the man in the rural society. So that is what we're doing. We're making use of the various channels of communication to make sure that we get this message across. In the southeast, we are using the same approach, allowing them, the states themselves, to drive the process, to lead, to be on the driver's seat, so that they will be able to develop their own risk communication messages and the approach. They will know the effective approach to reach their people. Remember, in the southeast, let me just give an example. In the north, you might decide to use traditional leaders and they will effectively communicate to their people. The people in the north, they might respect their traditional leaders, respect their religious leaders, and everything. But in the southeast, the best person to use may not necessarily be the traditional leader. Even when you engage the traditional leader, you will still need to get down to those people, maybe the market organizations and co, and make use of them, because the average Igbo man does not have that much regards for a traditional leader, might not even listen to him. So these are different scenarios and different contexts, and we use different approaches to reach these people. So it's something that requires a lot of creativity, and we are doing this with the support of our partners, the support of experts in risk communication and community engagement. We have developed a risk communication and community engagement strategy that we're using, and we are implementing it to the letter. And even though it seems very slow, but it is working, and hopefully we will be very, very happy to see communities themselves taking ownership of this strategy and driving the process themselves.
Dr. Countdown to the reopening of airports, though the experiment, there were some airports that started before the others. The Minister of Aviation said clearly that one group of persons that will give government problem in terms of compliance were the ministers, the politicians, the senators, the senior military officers, name them within government, top-notch, top officials. Was very emphatic. And a few days ago, PTF, that is the Presidential Task Force, went again to say they were very specific on the political class, that they should be very circumspect for whatever reason, so that they show example. What's your emphasis on this?
So it's so important that as leaders lead by example. Whenever I see people outside the country, whether you are a governor or you are a member of the legislature or you are a big-time businessman, they queue properly, they behave themselves, they follow the rules, they are polite to the people that are serving them at the airports. They don't insult those that are doing their job legally. But the moment people land in Abuja or Lagos, it's almost like our heads have been opened and that part of our brain that handles polite behavior has been taken out, and we become irrational. The law is meant for everybody. The reason why in society we have order, the reason why you can come to work without anybody stopping you and taking over your vehicle or assaulting you, etc., is because we have order in society, and that order also depends on people respecting the legal frameworks. VIPs, when they land in Abuja or wherever, in any airport, when they land, they need to respect the rules that we have put in place. You have to fill a health form to let us know what your risk is. You have to allow yourself to be subjected to temperature monitoring. Some of the airports are disinfecting bags. You have to allow that. You have to queue properly and maintain self-distancing. Because remember, we're trying to protect public health here. And when it comes to public health, the individual is not important. You can come in as a VVIP, but that importance is taken out when it comes to public health.
What if it happens, for instance, an operative is on the line of duty to check these officials, and a top-ranking officer says, please allow me as a minister, allow me as a general? It could happen.
Well, Covet has no respect for anybody. We've had people at the very high echelons that have died from Covet. As far as we're concerned, we are all human beings. We all have to comply with the law. If you break the law, there will be consequences. We need to treat our staff that work in the airports. We need to treat them the way we expect to be treated. And the PTF will continue to take a very hard decision on this. People have to comply. If you come in, you have to comply with our rules. If you do not comply with our rules, do not blame us if we embarrass you. Our staff and the staff within the aviation sector have been given very clear guidelines. And I'm sure President Muhammadu Buhari will follow the rules if he was landing in the airport. So if the president of the country will follow the rules, why should you think that you are exempted? Why should you think that you are exempted? And in any case, if you're outside the country, you will follow the rules. If you go to the UK, there have been instances where the wife of the Prime Minister, for instance, was stopped because she had not paid her ticket, underground ticket. She was fined. So rules are meant for everybody to follow, especially if there are implications for the public when it comes to public safety. And the PTF will continue to support the aviation authorities and our security and enforcement agencies to make sure that people comply with the rules, whether it's public health related or whether it's security related or whatever. Forget about you are a VIP. Even if you are a VIP, are you going to be a VIP forever? You might as well get used to the normal, the new normal, because eventually you might leave the job that you are in, and then when you come into the country or when you are traveling out, do you expect to be given the same sort of treatment? Our job is to protect public health, and anybody who places himself or herself at the risk of the public getting infection, we will definitely not sit back and just watch.
Okay, our next line of reports, let's take a vox pop from Enugu.
All the good measures that were listed by SCDC, people still feel that this is a hoax, that coronavirus is a hoax, and therefore they still behave the way they had been behaving. They have refused to abide by all the measures like sanitizing their hands, washing their hands regularly, the worst is even the social and physical distancing that is being preached every day, both in all media, by every agency. People still refuse to abide by that. You see people sneak to go and conduct burial where there is gathering, despite the ban on burial. The only schools that I think the government or family stopped people from doing.
It can't be left only to government. Government have done the bits they can do, but I believe there's always room for improvement. But I think individuals, the risk perception, like I just heard, at the state, initially people in Enugu State, the town union people, and were given 50,000 each to mobilize and create awareness about the risk perception of this thing. But you go to communities, people still bury like there's nothing going on. People hug, people shake. Yeah, I mean, it's wrong. And let me tell you, it's not written on the face. And the thing, unless we change our perception, and each community, I'm advocating that each community should have an enforcement team. This can be done by the Igwe and the town union person. We must not wait for God, because it's we that are dying. People are dying mainly, and people, undiagnosed deaths, probable deaths from this COVID is really significant.
Over here, we try to obey that, but it's unfortunate that some people are not taking COVID-19 seriously. It's a very serious thing that should be taken very seriously.
Big Hop Abba is next.
Workers were not going to work because of transportation problems. And also during the lockdown, goods were not freely moved to our various depots.
Businesses has kind of slowed down. It was terrible.
Business really slowed. In fact, it was like it is in a standstill.
Move now to Port Harcourt.
The absence of cure for coronavirus, basic but proactive methods which include non-pharmaceutical safety protocols such as social distancing of about 1.5 to 2 meters, hand washing, use of alcohol-based sanitizer, and wearing of face masks have been widely recommended to help stop the spread of the disease. Despite these measures, the country tends to record increase with the number of those infected daily. The reason may not be far-fetched by the different myths and beliefs of the people about COVID-19 and outright disregard to COVID-19 guidelines.
You can see a lot of people wearing face masks, although I'm not wearing anyone for now. A lot of people are wearing it just to make sure they protect themselves.
By the simple use of face masks, you won't see people obeying simple protocol of sanitizing their hands. So from the basis, there are misinformation. Have we done so well in terms of awareness? I would say yes. But in terms of health education, no.
Some even attach religious connotation to COVID-19, saying it is a sign of end time and punishment from God. Others believe the virus is the aftermath of technology.
My belief is that the world is undergoing an elevation that we are going to be elevated in terms of technology.
What we are seeing with our eyes, what is happening all over the world, and what we are hearing, a man with his right senses will know that this pandemic is real.
The various myths and beliefs notwithstanding, medical experts advise against negligence of the safety protocols as coronavirus is real.
Just coming in now is an update from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, which states that 463 new cases of COVID-19 have been. That's the update, and the breakdown shows that Lagos has 128, Kwara 92, Enugu 39, Delta 33, Edo 29, Plateau 28, Kaduna 23. Others are Oyo 15, Ogun 14, Osun 14, FCT 12, Ondo 9, Rivers 9, Abia 8, Bayelsa 5, Ekiti 3, and Borno 2. That brings the total figure to 33,616 confirmed, 13,792 discharged, and 754 deaths. That's the update from NCDC as of now in Nigeria. Now, let's go to Professor Obonga. Professor Obonga, by the reports you heard and reactions from Nigerians, and also what Professor Dr. Aliu said before we went on break, we took the reports, perception, value mindset reorientation, and progression. How do you link them regarding the attitude of most Nigerians in all this?
It's not very difficult to see that the attitudes of Nigerians sometimes mirror the behavioral tendencies of their leaders. And it's very unfortunate that at a time when we need some sort of legitimacy, we need confidence in the system, where you tell the people, the Nigerian people, that this is the best thing to do, is good for you, for them to believe. Their perception can be explained very easily from the dynamics of a corrupt cabal, wherein daily, while the government is trying to tell Nigerians to behave in a particular way, there are continuous reports of looting of the nation's treasury. And why have we not succeeded in having behavioral change among those corrupt officials? And we're asking Nigerians to undertake behavioral change, innocent, non-criminal activities. You know, sometimes we need to balance these things. Is the perception that the people telling them to do things are themselves not being truthful. Somebody has to speak truth quietly and politely to power. You who are asking the ordinary Nigerian who just wants to go to the market to continue his or her business, have you changed your behavior towards looting public property, public monies? So, in a nutshell, and this is the painful conclusion, Nigerians don't have confidence in a system of administrators who are actually themselves demonstrating that people are stealing their patrimony. If you break it down to ordinary domestic levels of analysis, you will feel the same way. There needs to be example. I am really impressed, and of course I believe Dr. Sani Aliyu, when he says if President Muhammadu Buhari were coming into the country, he will subject himself to the protocols in place by the PTF. We saw one of your reports where, he was going to wash his hands. Previously, it used to be very difficult to get such high-profile endorsement of epidemiological issues like this, to show a president putting political will, putting his support personally by making pronouncements and even demonstrating. This is in a certain way unprecedented in this kind of president. Now, if everybody were like that, it would be easier. You will have a situation where Dr. Aliyu, Dr. Ochu will tell Nigerians, this is where we want you to go, and they'll believe them. But there are people whose corrupt activities in this country affect the social capital that leadership needs in order to direct behavior change in this country. Nigerians who follow thieves is the way it is in our ethos. So we need to first look inwards as leaders and see what measures we will take in order to communicate quite clearly to Nigerians that you need to accept what we are saying, because those who go contrary to the established protocols, anti-corruption protocols and what have you, they will pay, and they will pay heavily for it. We must start from that level. If it is these Nigerians that you are seeing, these ones you are interviewing, the regular Nigerians they are of course beautiful people. They are not the problems of this country. They are easily led, but they are also easily misled. Let us look inwards. We know Nigeria has among the best technocratic class in the world across all disciplines. It's not because we don't have the knowledge base, but we now need the integrity. And not always to appear to be blaming the population, the Nigerian citizenry, for not doing the correct thing. What have they done wrong? I'm not justifying anything that they are doing. I'm saying, like Dr. Chu said, put the matter in context. She talked about content, communicator, context. Context. This is the context of this skepticism. They are a highly incredulous people, and there is a legitimacy to their incredulity. So corruption is not a simple thing. It's complex and combustible.
Prof, we'll come back to you for your concluding thoughts, and let me go to Dr. Chinwe. Dr. Chinwe, we know very well it's an arduous task, but from this testimonies we have seen, NCDC is up to it and is not giving up. All the strategies in place, if it appears it's winning, you come up with new ones. Let's reassure Nigerians that all this, no matter the hiccups, there is hope.
Yes, I want to use this opportunity to congratulate Nigerians for how far we have come in responding to this outbreak. We may not be where we want to be now, but we have made a lot of progress. And if we begin to count these blessings, that we are fortunate that we have not started recording the kind of number of cases that we are seeing elsewhere, though we also know that we may not have been able to test as much as we should, but at least the number of deaths are not as much as we are hearing. Though we are also feeling very, very sad that we have lost some. But we are grateful to God for helping us thus far. And I also want to reassure us that in as much as COVID-19 is highly infectious, it's also very easy to contain, very simple methods that we require to contain them. And these are captured in these 4 principles of physical distancing, ensuring that you maintain that 2-meter distance from the other person. You wash your hands frequently under running water with soap. You wipe surfaces with soap and water or use disinfectants. Very, very easy to get. You can use bleach you mix it with water and get the right concentration and wipe your surfaces. You also wear your face masks whenever you are out in public places, you're going out, you wear your face mask. And you try as much as possible to maintain good respiratory hygiene. When you're coughing, you cough into your elbow, all those things. These are all simple things that we don't need money, so to say, to do. We can do them. We've been able to overcome even bigger challenges in the past, and I know that together, collectively, we can overcome this one. All of us have a role to play. Each and every one of us has a role to play, and we are all very, very important in this outbreak response. So I want to encourage us, let's continue to work together. Let's avoid rumors. Let's avoid false information, spreading fake news, unverified information. Let's leave those things behind. Yes, we may have a lot of political issues that we want to address, but let's stay alive to be able to address them by doing the right thing. Let each and every one of us take responsibility and do what we need to do to overcome this scourge. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
We have heard from the daily briefings by the PTF appeals to Nigerians across the divide, across the tiers, public, private sector, to comply with the protocols so that this virus, it is when you are in violation of the protocol, it even spreads wider. Now, in all this, if these appeals falls in deaf ears and everybody is not complying, or most persons are not complying, or some persons are not complying, what's the plan?
So, of course, it's difficult to predict the future, but what we know from science and from the way pandemics run is if you do not put an intervention, they will run their course. And the problem with COVID is if it runs its course, a lot of people will die, particularly those that are vulnerable above the age of 60, those with comorbidities, diabetes, hypertension, etc. And the deaths we are seeing now reflect the numbers we had about 3 weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago, because it takes about 3 to 4 weeks on average for most people to develop severe illness enough to die. The numbers we have now, we're not going to see those deaths until possibly another 3 weeks from now. But God forbid, hopefully the numbers will continue to come down. But as I've always said, the only way we can stop transmission, the only way we can get on top of this pandemic is if we follow these interventions that Dr. Chinwe elucidated very clearly. And we know it's all about behavioral change. It's also about perception of risk and our awareness, continuous awareness of our risks. So there are certain things that I do all the time. When you ask to see me physically, the first question I will ask you is, do we really need to meet physically? I've cut the number of people I receive in terms of visitors, etc. I don't go into my office all the time. I do most of my work virtually. When I go out, I'm very sensitive to my surrounding. I'm very sensitive to gelling my hands, use of face mask. If you come too close to me, I'm sensitive enough to distance myself. And despite the fact that we are all over, but we have continued to avoid catching this virus by using some of these measures. Eventually the pandemic will go away. Eventually it will go away. No pandemic has lasted a lifetime and refused to go away. But it's going to go away with a lot of people globally. Already we have more than 500,000 deaths. And the game is to make sure that we are not one of those that this virus will go away with. The game is to remain alive, to stay alive. And how do you stay alive? Is by keeping safe, by protecting yourself, by protecting your family, your loved ones, and having that collective responsibility, personal as well as collective responsibility. When you put a face mask, actually you're protecting others more than you're protecting yourself. But if the next person puts a face mask as well, he's protecting you. Yeah. So you can see that it's mutual. It becomes a mutual sort of arrangement. And as Prof said, I very much agree with him that public mistrust is driving a lot of the skepticism we have. But it's not just in Nigeria, because if you go to the US, if you go to Europe, etc., there are still people who do not believe that this is a problem. And a lot of the effectiveness of the COVID response itself, internationally, if you look at countries that have done very well, it's because you have political commitment and leadership at the highest levels. Countries where their political leaders are giving out mixed messages, where their body language suggests that this is not a problem, they're the ones that are having issues. The United States, Brazil, some of the Southern African countries, some countries in Southeast Asia, for instance. And that's why it's so critical. We are lucky that at the highest level, President Buhari has really committed to this COVID response. They provided us with a budget within 2 weeks of starting PTF. We have continued to engage very well in terms of our multi-sectoral responsibilities. But the states need to do more. And I'm pleased that a lot of the state governors are with us. They understand the implications. But those that need to come on board, I'm appealing to them to come on board quickly, before it is too late, before we start having this issue of mysterious deaths that we know are actually due to something that is ongoing. So that's my appeal. Public, please remain safe. Use these pharmaceutical measures. This is the new normal, but it will go away. Eventually, we will go back to where we were before. But let us try and make sure that we are there rather than we are history.
Okay. Professor Bo, by way of your last word for the program tonight, you have heard Dr. Liu say, if you put on a mask, you're protecting me. If I put on a mask, I'm protecting you. The word here is all of us will take responsibility. Dr. Liu will take responsibility, you will take responsibility, Dr. Chin will take responsibility. What's your last thought?
Mine is to endorse and reinforce what they have said. That's what the science is. That's where knowledge takes us to. There is no other approach out of this particular pandemic. So we need to continue reaffirming, repeating, reasserting these messages to our people in all quarters. And having done so, I, along with your distinguished guests, I see hope, tremendous hope, because if we learn the appropriate lessons, prepare for the next pandemic, that is something which I really believe, with due respect to Dr. Liu, the PTF has to also take on board. It should also utilize this opportunity of fighting this pandemic to a standstill, to preparing for the next one. What kind of country do we have to have so that even if we don't know the nature of the next pandemic, we have certain systems in place? We will not start running helter-skelter. Can we start producing ventilators, for example, internally in the country? If we did that, if we learned the appropriate lessons and overcame this, my belief is that after this corona will come our coronation. It is something that I believe is dialectical, and we'll do just fine as Nigerians. That's the message I live. It's one of hope, and after the corona will come the coronation. Yes.
He's a professor of sociology. He joined us from Ibadan Network Center. It was nice having you on Tuesday Live tonight.
Thank you very much, Omini. Thank you.
Chinwe, just one word before we go.
We can do it. By the grace of God, who has been with us, He will see us through. Let's take responsibility. Let's keep praying, and we will surely overcome.
Right. Okay, Doctor, let me ask this one word. If people refuse to comply, will there be total lockdown again?
We will not sit back and allow our citizens to die. That's all I can say. We will not sit back. We take our responsibility as the PTF seriously, and we will make those recommendations. We will take those hard decisions and make the relevant recommendations to Mr. President. But we will not sit down and allow our citizens to die of a preventable illness.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sani Aliu, National Coordinator of Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. Dr. Sani, have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
That's it on Tuesday Live tonight. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.